Okay, so today we're going to be doing Chapter 9, Lesson 4, and this is subtract like fractions. Give me 1 second as I put my headphones in.
So subtracting and adding fractions are pretty much identical. The only difference is that before, when we were adding, you were using the operation of addition, except now you're just going to be subtracting, which is a different operation. The steps are still pretty much the same. The only thing that differs is the operation. So let's go ahead and start taking our notes for today. So this is your star, and you are going to write to subtract fractions you subtract the numerators, so the two numerators, and keep the denominator the same, just like you do in addition. So the only difference is there's a different operation. So let's look at this. Just like in our addition, we're going to do the 5 steps. So to subtract fractions, you, and then we're going to go ahead and write the 5 steps. 1, subtract the numerators. Subtract the numerators. Then step 2 is to keep the same denominator. Step 3 is rewrite the new fraction. 4, just like with our addition, subtraction, the same thing. Check if the fraction is in its simplest form. Then the 5th step would be to put in simplest form if possible. So only if it's possible for it to be in a more simplest form, because sometimes the answer will already be in its simplest form. Put in simplest form if possible. So let's go ahead and look at our first example for today. I'm going to highlight the 5 steps. So to subtract fractions, you must 1, subtract numerator. 2, keep the same denominator. 3, rewrite the new fraction. 4, check to see if the fraction is in its simplest form. Then, if it's not, go ahead and put it in its simplest form, if possible. So our first example for today is find 5/8 minus 3/8. So if we're doing our 5 steps, the first step is to subtract the numerators. So 5 minus 3 equals 2. That is the first step. Then I keep the same denominator. The same denominator, they both have 8. So the 2 is over the 8. I have rewrote the new fraction of 2/8. That is me subtracting and keeping the same denominator. Then I move on to step 4, where it says check if the fraction is in its simplest form. So in order to be in its simplest form, the only factor that the numerator and denominator can share is 1, just like we've been talking about this entire time. So this is where you list off all the factors of 2 and 8 to see if it is in its simplest form. So for 2, the only two factors are 1 and 2. Then let's go ahead and do 8. We have 1 and 8, and 2 and 4. So you can see here, they share another factor besides 1, so it's not in its simplest form. The greatest common factor that they share is 2. So the greatest common factor equals 2. With the greatest common factor, that means you have to divide the greatest common factor by the numerator and the denominator. So I'm going to do that here. 2 over 8 divided by 2. For numerator and denominator, 2 divided by 2 equals 1. 8 divided by 2 equals 4. So just to double check to see if it is in its simplest form, let's go ahead and write all the factors. So for factors of 1, it's just 1 and 1. Then for 4, we have 1 and 4, and 2 and 2. The only factor that they share is 1. So 1 over 4 is the answer in its simplest form. You went through all 5 steps, and this would be your final answer of 1 over 4. And that is how you subtract like fractions. Same thing as the addition. The only difference is that now instead of adding with the operation, now you're subtracting.